What time is it? Fight!
Welcome to the MMA Podcast.
Check this out.
Get all the latest news, interviews, and stars of the MMA world. Hosted by yours, John Boy McElroy. So tune in, everyone, right here to the MMA Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Martial Arts Chat Podcast. I'm your host, John Boy McElroy, here with you on today's show. Thank you so much for listening, tuning in on Spreaker.com. You can also catch us at our website, which is www.marchchat.wordpress.com. Like us on Facebook.com/Martial Arts Chat, and of course on Twitter, which is at Martial Arts Chat as well. So let's get started. Today's show is another MMA Roundtable special, where the panel will be breaking down UFC Fight Night Holloway vs Oliveira and looking ahead to UFC 191 on the 5th of September. So let's get cracking. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on our MMA Roundtable today. Joining me on the panel, we have Adri Kumara, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner and coach with Indonesian Top Team, and a blogger and MMA journalist with MMA Latest News. Fouad Bahaji, a sports fan and blogger, and now a co-host of Carson's Corner with the Bob Carson's podcast. Be sure to check that out. And later on in the show, we'll be joined by Kevin Jones, a boxing and MMA radio personality in Texas with Double T 104.3 and associated with Genesis Combat Sports. So before we begin our breakdown here today, guys, I'm sure you all heard the news of Jordan Mein calling it quits at only 25, soon to be 26. And it brings us to our prelim main event for a breakdown, the Frankie Perez retirement. You know, in the cage, post-fight, his UFC debut. I don't think anyone was expecting him to hang up the gloves. Certainly if there was a retirement speech coming, it would have been perhaps from the defeated Sam Stout. So quite shocking, really. Adri, I'll start with you on this one. Jordan Mein, now that he's in that retirement club, is this likely to become commonplace with some of the young UFC fighters?
What is his exact reason? He didn't say any exact reason why he retired. So
I don't think it's been announced yet officially what his reasoning is, but it's worrying that this might be a disturbing trend.
I think he said something about missing out on his family life and stuff. Yeah, it was apparently to do with him, just being taken away from his family and from his day-to-day life. And
I mean, we've heard a lot of rumblings, people, especially online, are putting the blame squarely on Reebok and just how corporate the UFC is becoming because of this Reebok deal. What do you think, Fred? Do you think it's a case of young and up-and-coming fighters, unless you're a Conor McGregor, you don't really stand a chance of a decent payday?
I mean, possibly if he was paid better, then possibly he would hang about. From what I can see, it's not about that. From his words, from what I can see, it's more about the life of a fighter and how really it doesn't allow you really time to do much else while you're in that career. I don't know. It's like there's something in the air at the moment with all these retirements. I will say one thing: the life of an MMA fighter. It's the average fan doesn't even begin to appreciate what those guys go through. When it comes to training camps or weight cuts or even just fighting its actual self. It's an absolute beast of a life, and it's kind of easy for people to. Yeah, I mean, even Michael Bisping, he made one or two comments. I think he was just. I don't think he thought about it when you appreciate what those guys go through.
Like you said, it's definitely in the air, and it's not something that's positive. But the human in me just says family comes first and your health comes first, and of course that. But I wouldn't like this to be a common trend. But let's move on to Saturday's card. We had UFC Fight Night main event, Holloway versus Charles Oliveira, versus Max Holloway. And starting with Olivier Aubin Mercier versus Tony Sims. A unanimous decision win for Aubin Mercier for the Canadian TriStar lightweight. He's I think he's 3-1 now, and the hometown crowd were well behind him. Adri, I'll start with yourself. How did you see the fight, and where would you like to see the Montreal fighter, the 155 pounder? Where would you like to see him go from here following that win?
Well, fighting out of TriStar, we expect the end of the fight to go that way. I mean, like, TriStar are known for always getting ahead in terms of points in the fight.
Yeah.
I'm trying to load the rankings right now. I think it's time for him to start getting a real guy. I mean, like a tough opponent, and to test is he only like does he belong on the main card, or was that just like a one-time thing that happens? Yeah, I really want to see him fighting someone on the top 15.
It would be nice, yeah. Fahad, how about yourself? How did you see the fight, and where would you like to see him moving on from that victory?
I think the fight was kind of predictable. Mercier sort of showcased his wrestling and really dominated Sims. But even though Sims was sort of dominated grappling wise, I think there were positives for Sims. A lot of determination, and his submission defense looked pretty on point. I mentioned his determination, but also his fitness. I mean, this guy's a striker, and he went through basically 3 rounds of just pure grappling. And yeah, I mean, he was still, he didn't look gassed by the end of it, and so I was impressed with him despite how the fight went for him. I was really impressed. Mercier, I mean, yeah, I think I agree with Adri. Probably he's right for a top 15 opponent now. You're just looking at him, you can tell the guy's got some physical strength there.
Oh, absolutely. Adri, I'm coming to you as the grappling expert. But Aubin Mercier, his background, judo and jiu-jitsu, and most recently I believe he's practicing taekwondo. We saw that rear naked choke attempt early in round 1. How did you rate his grappling game?
Well, having a black belt in both, like in judo, is no joke, man. It's a tough sport, and a brown belt in BJJ also. Yeah, but we're talking about the UFC here. And it's MMA, and you know the famous saying, like, when a black belt gets punched in the face, they turn into a brown belt, and so on and so on. Yeah, I think Mercier has a very good potential of becoming a future superstar in the UFC.
It would be awesome to see him continue on this momentum.
Yeah, technique wise, I cannot say much because when did that fight happen? I kind of forgot about it, actually. So
it's not forgetful, huh?
Yeah. But I really want to see him fighting someone on the top 15, maybe Masvidal, because Masvidal is number 15 right now. It's going to be a good test for him.
Yeah, and an experienced guy. I know he's I believe he's made the drop recently to 155. That would be an interesting fight, and see if he can capitalise on that momentum. Well, let's move on to Chad Rapice versus Francisco Trinaldo.
I'm very, very excited about this fight.
Oh, 10-0 going into this fight, and it was undefeated, coming off the momentum that he's had. But he suffers his first loss via TKO to the veteran. Nadja, we saw Rapice dropped early with that left hook, followed by a scramble on the ground. And once the BJJ brown belt got his hooks in, was there anything Rapice? Was there anything he could have done apart from turtle up?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a big fan of Trinaldo since his days on Tough Brazil. This guy's super strong, and that's how I expect him to fight. Every time he goes out there, that's how I expect him to go out. Well, Rapice himself is a very tough opponent. Like you said, 10-0 coming into the fight, with a very good fight record. I mean, like, even though most of it are decision in the UFC, but he's a tough fighter. One of those victory was against the guy we just talked about, Mercier. Yeah, I can't stop looking at the finish of the fight. I didn't expect Laprise to turtle up and Masaranduba with Trinaldo on top of him, just pounding that's not the end. I expected, even though I kind of expected Trinaldo to overpower Laprise during the fight.
Before I get your thoughts on the actual fight itself, I'm just noticing here that Trinaldo, he was a 265 plus underdog going into that fight. Do you think that was deserved for a veteran like him, Fad?
I don't like to argue with bookmakers, but I didn't really feel that he was that much of an outsider going into the fight. I think there might have been a bit of overconfidence with Laprise a little bit coming in with his record, and I think perhaps he thought he had Trinaldo's number. But it was a big punch. It hurt him. Possibly explains, how he acted on the floor once he went down. I think he did get hurt, and as Adri said, Trinaldo is clearly a very powerful guy, and like they always say, power is the last thing to go.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. Well, moving on to our next bout, that was Patrick Cote and Josh Burkman, two real veterans there. Adri, your thoughts on the fight? Burkman, he seemed to be in control early on, sort of, but then kind of lost his way, got caught with that right hand at the end of round one. How did you see the fight?
This is the Patrick Cote that we know. This is the powerful Patrick Cote that we want to see, right? That's exactly how I expected the fight to go. I got nothing else to say about that. I mean, this is the Patrick Cote that we got excited about years ago when he was still relevant in the UFC. But I think he's on his way back. I think he's on his because he can do he can do another run, maybe way to the title or something. But I'm very excited to see what Patrick Cote holds in the future for in the UFC.
And found he's wanting big fights. He's called Hector Lombard. Obviously, that's pending his situation potentially coming back in January. First of all, were you surprised at his call out? And if it's not Lombard, who would you like to see him fight?
That's something I want to see again. Patrick Cote is he was very he was very exciting back. I mean, years ago, he was a very exciting fighter to watch. He was he's something. I mean, if we compare to today, he's a guy like Chad Mendes. I can compare to Chad Mendes because even though he's not a champion back then, we want to see him fight. We want to see him go out there and smash. Betting him against against Hector Lombard, it's something I want to see because we're gonna see two guys with KO power, two guys with killer instinct go out at each other. It's gonna be a treat for the fans. It's
going to be exciting. Farad, how did you see the fight? It was a lot of it was in the pocket, especially that sort of first round. And then it was, I don't know if I can't really remember what both corners said to each other going into the third, but it seemed like they both kind of wanted a finish. It's just, I can't believe Josh Burkman hasn't been finished from strikes before. That was another stat that really surprised me. Not to say that he's a man that's got a weak chin, but by any stretch of the imagination. But the two of them were definitely putting their chins to the test. How did you see the fight going down?
Yeah, it was. I thought it was a decent fight. It was pretty enjoyable. Pretty scrappy, but did you guys notice Josh Burkman's kind of new style, where he was sort of
very side on? I noticed, yeah,
and he was stance switching a lot. I mean, I think he's been watching TJ Dillashaw, and a couple of times it kind of worked for him. Where Cote didn't seem to know. He did. Yeah, probably needs to work on it a bit more though. It was a decent fight. It was kind of scrappy. Some of the boxing technique on show wasn't the best. Cote is a man who has been sort of appreciated for his hands in the past, but perhaps that was That was when the sport wasn't as developed. Yeah, Berkman. I mean, that's 2 defeats now.